My parents always said I was a fragile snowflake, too soft for the real world. So they shipped me off to Grace Haven Christian College to toughen up. I was 18, wide-eyed and clueless, thinking life was a montage of sunsets and kind strangers. The first day, a nun confiscated my phone, and I realized this wasn't summer camp. It was a crucible. Grace Haven was a fortress of rules, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York, where the air smelled of pine and piety. The campus was beautiful, with stone buildings and stained glass chapels, but it felt like a prison dressed in holy garb. No music, no internet, no questioning the doctrine. I was Clara, the girl who'd never tasted rebellion, now drowning in a sea of thou shalt nots. My roommate, Esther, was my first shock. She was a pastor's daughter with a sharp tongue and a secret stash of contraband novels hidden under her mattress. They think they can break us, she whispered that first night, her eyes glinting with mischief. But they won't. The dean, Dr. Hawthorne, was a towering man with a voice like thunder and a Bible always in hand. He preached discipline, but his gaze lingered too long on the girls in our mandatory modesty classes. I hated how he made me feel small, like my questions about faith were sins themselves. Clara, you must surrender to God's will, he'd say, his smile tight. I nodded, but inside, I was screaming. Esther saw it. She slipped me a dog-eared copy of 1984 in one night, whispering, "Read this. It's not just a story." That book was a grenade, blowing open my sheltered world. Big Brother wasn't just in the novel, it was in the chapel, the dorms, the way they watched us. Classes were a blur of scripture and submission. We memorized verses, not ideas. I met Jonah, a quiet boy with haunted eyes, during theology class. He was different, gentle, but his hands shook when he spoke about his past. I ran away from home. He confessed one day by the lake, his voice barely above the wind. My dad thought this place would fix me. I didn't ask what fix meant, but I saw the bruises fading on his wrists. We became friends, stealing moments to talk about life beyond Grace Haven's walls. He dreamed of painting, of colors bursting free from the gray rules we lived under. I dreamed of freedom, too, but I didn't know what it looked like. Esther, Jonah, and I formed a secret pact. We called ourselves the Heretics, half joking, half serious. We'd sneak out after curfew to the old oak tree behind the chapel, sharing stories and forbidden thoughts. Esther told us about her mother, who left her father's church and never looked back. "She's free," Esther said, her voice cracking. "I want that." Jonah admitted he was gay, his words tumbling out like a confession to God himself. I held his hand, feeling the weight of his fear and the warmth of his trust. I didn't have a big secret, but I felt one growing, a hunger to question everything I'd been taught. The turning point came during the winter revival. Dr. Hawthorne announced a cleansing ceremony where students would publicly confess their sins. The chapel was packed, the air thick with incense and guilt. Esther was called up first. She stood, chin high, and instead of confessing, she spoke. "This place doesn't teach faith, it teaches fear." The room gasped. Dr. Hawthorne's face turned purple. "You're a disgrace," he spat, ordering her to leave. I wanted to stand, to shout, but my legs were lead. Jonah grabbed my hand under the pew, his grip tight. Esther walked out, head high, but I saw the tears in her eyes. That night, I found her packing. "They're expelling me," she said, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "Come with me." "Clara." I froze. Leave? I'd never even left my hometown before Grace Haven. But the thought of staying, of swallowing their rules, made my stomach churn. Jonah joined us, his face pale. "They're watching me now," he said. "If I stay, they'll break me." We made a plan, reckless and desperate. We'd leave together, find Esther's mother in Boston, start over. The escape was chaos. We slipped out during a snowstorm, the wind howling as we ran through the woods. My heart pounded. not just from fear, but from the thrill of defiance. We hitched a ride with a trucker who didn't ask questions, his radio blaring outlaw country. Boston was a blur of lights and noise, so different from Gracehaven's suffocating silence. Esther's mother, Ruth, took us in. Her apartment was small, cluttered with books and paintings, a world alive with color and questions. She hugged us, her warmth thawing the fear in my chest. "You're safe now," she said, and for the first time, I believed it. Life in Boston wasn't easy. We worked odd jobs, me at a cafe, Jonah at an art supply store, Esther as a library aide. We were broke, but we were free. I started reading, not just novels, but philosophy, science, ideas that made my mind hum. Jonah painted, his canvases bursting with the emotions he'd buried at Gracehaven. Esther wrote poetry, raw and fierce, about breaking chains. We argued, laughed, cried, and grew. I learned that faith wasn't about rules, but about searching for truth, even when it hurt. Months later, I got a letter from my parents. They were angry, hurt, but mostly scared. "We wanted to protect you." They wrote. I wrote back, not with anger, but with honesty. I told them about Esther's courage, Jonah's art, my own awakening. I didn't know if they'd understand, but I had to try. Gracehaven had tried to teach me lessons, but not the ones my parents expected. It taught me to question, to fight, to choose my own path. Now I'm standing in Ruth's apartment, watching Jonah paint and Esther scribble in her notebook. I feel the weight of our journey. We're not heroes, just kids who refuse to be caged. Gracehaven wanted to shape us, but we shaped ourselves. The world is messy, scary, beautiful, and I'm no longer the naive girl who arrived at its gates. I'm Clara, still learning, still questioning, still free. What do you think? Were we right to run, or should we have stayed and fought from within? Share your thoughts. NT.